One time, I laid my cat down on her back.
Are you gonna get arrested for this?
I don't know. No.
Think about it.
I don't think so.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't penetrate. I laid the cat down on her back, and then I moved her little chicken legs, like, spread open or whatever. And I was like, if I just like hump, but like on her tummy, like that's not weird, like whatever. And then I humped it, and it kept going. I came all over the cat.
No, you did not.
It was like my first sexual experience.
What the fuck?
Last year I revisited Maburaho, which is one of the many harems I watched way back in summer 2014. Today I thought I'd take a look at another one of those series, which, if you couldn't tell by the title, is Omamori Himari. Although I barely remember the show, I do remember enjoying it a decent amount. But then again, that was 8 years ago, when after rewatching it, my opinion has changed, and sadly for the worse. Omamori Himari isn't bad, it's mostly watchable, but it just doesn't quite do it for me anymore. And I guess I should explain why that is, so let's get started, morpheads.
Don't let your kids watch it!
So the series centers around a high schooler named Yuto Amikawa, but for the sake of comedy, I'm going to be calling him Shane Dawson. Shane lives alone but is visited by his childhood friend Rinko every day, who wants to collect his sperm and store them in her coochie. One day they go to school, go to the rooftop, and then Shane's best friend Andrew comes and tries to kill them. But then a nice sexy lady named Himari comes, kills the demon that was possessing him, and then hits Alt F4. Then later that night, she sneaks into Shane's bedroom and sucks him off.
Don't do it. I'm a virgin.
Not only did Himari take his virginity, but she explains that she's an Ayakashi, which is Spanish for demon spirits. Shane finds out that he's also her master because his ancestors spared her ancestors hundreds of years ago. Apparently, his family is known for going around and killing Ayakashi because I guess they've always had nothing better to do. So because of this, Himari becomes his bodyguard and will do anything he says, and yes, even anal.
Can we get much higher?
So Himari transfers into Shane's class, Rinko gets jealous of her and her massive tits and challenges her to a... So they have their gay little duel, and guess what? Rinko loses. Now, in all seriousness, I quite like this scene. This entire montage of Rinko getting her ass whooped only happens because of how stubborn she is. This scene is entirely character motivated and driven. Nothing else is accomplished during these 3 minutes. It's solely here to have Rinko get her shit kicked in, which is great. Now, unfortunately, this is only one of the few good moments in the show. A large majority of the anime consists of either one of two things. The first being the dumb harem ichi fanservice moments, and the other being the mostly tolerable fight scenes. Now, obviously, I'm a harem fan, so of course I'm going to enjoy the fan service moments. They're far from the best ichi scenes I've watched, but they're okay, I guess. I think I got hard once, which honestly isn't very good, but still, they're fine. As for the battle scenes, they aren't bad, they're watchable, but certainly not great either. I've seen worse fights in other harems. DXD, but I am not going to name any of them. During the first couple episodes, the anime follows the Monster of the Week formula. Usually a new character will be introduced, Himari fights them, and then the episode typically ends with the antagonist falling for Shane. It's simple, it's been done in other harems before, but it works fairly well, so I can't really complain. At the end of episode 5, the last slut Kuesu makes her appearance, and the following 3 episodes are dedicated to show off and develop her. And I have to say, she is quite developed, alright. But in all seriousness, this arc is definitely the best part of the anime. Kuesu is a developed and enjoyable character, and that's because a fair amount of time is spent just around her. It's also not even that it centers around her, but that it doesn't center around her and Shane. Kuesu gets time solely for herself and also fights Shizuku and then Himari, both of which have nothing to do with Shane. Kuesu may want to gargle on Shane's semen, but she's still a character that has their own goals and problems in life. Now, while these episodes are decent, I can't quite say the same for the rest of them. Episode 9 really isn't that bad. There's some arousing scenes here and there, but it brings back characters from episode 4 and introduces new ones, none of which I care for. However, the new Ayakashi they introduced does suck on Himari's tit, which is pretty hot.
Oh, that's hot.
But then after this is episode 10, which sorta sucks. Basically, everyone is dicking around at Shane's house, there's some underwhelming ichi moments, and nothing really happens. They're just waiting for the fight against the tit sucker Sucker, which isn't supposed to start until the next day, or at least I think so. Who fucking knows? Then the next 2 episodes are just one big boring fight and it blows. We all know Himari is going to beat the bad guys, and we know that none of the girls or Shane are going to die. It's so predictable and uninteresting, and although the animation isn't half bad, it's nowhere near strong enough to carry this chore of a fight to sit through. The reason all the previous fights worked, or were at least tolerable, were because they were quick and finished within a couple minutes. Here it's an entire 2 episodes and it's really boring. These last 2 episodes especially were a drag to sit through. I may not have loved the previous episodes that much, but I was still going to give the series a strong 5 out of 10 since I was enjoying myself to a certain extent. But these last few episodes left a bad taste in my mouth, which made me lower my final score down by a fair amount. That being said, I think that's all I have to say about Himari's plot. The first half is somewhat enjoyable, there's some decent episodes towards the middle, but the last couple are pretty boring. Besides the last few episodes though, the series does manage to have tolerable fights and usually doesn't take itself too seriously either. They do explain the lore about Ayakashis as well as the Ayakashi Slayers, but I usually wasn't bored by these scenes. But yeah, that's Himari's story, so now time to move on to its gal pal characters.
ひまりさん
Meow.
Let's get this out of the way quickly. Shane sucks, he's boring, bland, and generic. He's not the absolute worst harem protagonist, but he's still shit. As for the girls, they're okay, I guess. Some of them are fairly developed, but some of them are sorta generic too. One thing I will say is that thankfully none of the girls are bad in the series. At the very least, some of them are forgettable, but then again, that's not good either. Another thing I brought up a few minutes ago was that episode 9 introduced multiple new characters, all of which I don't care for. So while its main cast is fine, its side characters suck the farts out of Biden's brain. I guess one final detail I'll note is that I do enjoy how all of, if not most of the girls don't really like each other. It's amusing to see them get angry and fight each other a decent amount of the time. Now this is something that's seen in other harems, but usually not to this extent. It's a very minor aspect, but I did enjoy it. Anyway, it's time for the traditional waifu war, where I officially rank each girl from worst to greatest. It's shit and piss time.
Number 5.
Rinko Kuzaki. Rinko is Shane's childhood friend, and unfortunately, she's worst girl. Like I said, none of the hot mamas in Himari are bad. Rinko just so happens to be the least good. Obviously, she has a crush on Shane because why wouldn't she? Her breasts are small and she wished they were bigger.
That's cause Jesus Christ is my nigga.
There are 2 main problems I have with Rinko. The first being that she doesn't get much screen time after the first couple episodes. As more and more characters get introduced, she sorta gets tossed to the side and doesn't really do much. Now it makes sense considering the Ayakashis are a big part of the show, but because of this, it easily makes Rinko the most forgettable and also least interesting character in the show. Due to her lack of screen time, Rinko doesn't get much time to develop, which results in her being just another typical childhood friend. All she does or did in the series was help Shane get out of his depression when his parents died 7 years ago. As mentioned earlier, she also got to duel with Himari in the first episode for a couple minutes, but besides that, she doesn't really do much. She's pretty forgettable, but I'd still suck on her nipples. Lizla Chelsea. Lizla is one of the many Ayakashi in the series, and she's alright. She's a Suka Mogami, which is an item that can turn into a spirit. Her real form is a teacup, but the form she decides to take is a big-breasted blonde, which is hot. Lizla works at her own Starbucks, and she likes it there because she's living a happy, peaceful life. Now, while I do enjoy Lizla, she has the same problem that I have with Rinko, which is that she doesn't really do much. She makes her first appearance in episode 3, and then after that, she barely does anything. She'll show up sometimes, people will come to her cafe occasionally, but besides that, she's not on screen very often. She isn't important, and that sucks because I would have liked to see more of her.
Damn, Daniel!
Shizuki. Barely taking the numero trace spot is Shizuki. She's another Ayakashi, and more specifically, she's a water dragon demon. She took the form of a short green-haired girl because because she thinks big tits are overrated, so I guess we'll agree to disagree. Shizuki also has a snake-like tongue, so I'd really want her to stick it down my cockhole. She originally wanted to kill Himari and Shane at first, but then after seeing how nice of a person he was, she immediately fell for him. She then goes to his house and pops out of the bathtub while Shane is taking a bath, which is pretty sick.
Hi, how are you?
Thankfully, unlike the last two girls, Shizuki doesn't get tossed at the side and isn't forgotten about. She gets enough screen time and feels like one of the main characters. She may not be the main focus, but that's alright because I'm alt-right. I got Himari Nohara. Okay, this and number 1 are extremely close. I originally had Himari at the number 1 spot, but after thinking it over, I think Uesu is just slightly better. Himari is good, don't get me wrong, but there's one small detail that puts her below Uesu. She's an Ayakashi, meaning that she isn't human, so how is sex supposed to work? Or more specifically, can she get pregnant? If yes, then would her children be human or half human, half Ayakashi? Would they have Ayakashi powers and be able to do weird shit? I don't know. And because I have no idea how that works, choosing Himari is sorta risky. Besides that film theory question though, Himari is good. She's one of the most developed characters in the show, which makes sense considering she is the main character. She's got a cool sword, fights to protect Shane, and also wants to fuck him too. But yeah, not much else to say. I wonder if her pussy smells like tuna.
21.
Kuesu Jinguji. Kuesu is best girl in Omamori Himari, even if it's only by a hair. A cat hair, that is. I already talked about Kuesu quite a bit earlier, but I guess I'll quickly repeat my thoughts. Episodes 6 through 8 center entirely around Kuesu, when because of that we understand her as a character and become more attached to her. She's an interesting and developed character and also has her own goals in life. She's not just a mindless zombie who craves for Shane's cummies, although she still really wants them. I love how she kisses him in front of Himari twice and says, "Fuck you, pussy." That was actually my 3rd kiss with him. What a fucking mad woman. I would smash anytime, anywhere, any day. Omamori Himari looks okay, I guess. It's not bad, but far from great. The anime was animated by I don't know how to pronounce it, but it starts with a Z. They aren't known for making great looking shows or even making great shows in general. But as for Himari, I guess they did a fine job. Some of the fights don't look half bad. Not all of them are winners, but overall they're surprisingly not too shabby. And when there's not fighting going on, it looks okay. There isn't much to complain about, but there isn't much to praise either. In terms of animation, it is fine. One small aspect about its art that does slightly bother me is its character designs. Now, don't get me wrong, the designs are perfectly fine, but they aren't very distinct. These designs look like they could easily fit into multiple other series, which isn't a good thing. If you were to show me a screenshot of Kuesu, Liz, or Rinko before rewatching the series, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you that they're from Himari. I'm not saying your series needs to have the most distinct and recognizable designs, but just try and not look generic. It's a minor complaint, and like I said, the anime still does look fairly good overall. I listened to the Himari soundtrack, which was all available to listen to on YouTube, and it was generic and forgettable. Some tracks were fine, but most of them were very average and bland. Its OP is sort of fine, but surprisingly its ED theme is kind of a banger. I'll listen to it sometimes, and yeah, it's pretty good. But everything else is still pretty bland. Not much else to say. Also, the anime is subbed only, which is disgusting!
For his neutral special, he wields a gun.
Well, that was Omamori Himari, and it was unsurprisingly not as good as I remember. Its first couple episodes are somewhat entertaining, some decent ones in the middle, but the last few were pretty boring and predictable. There's some memorable characters in its cast, its art isn't half bad, and most of the battles weren't terrible either. But like I've already said, its last couple episodes put a bad taste in my mouth, which really brings down the show for me. me. I could see how some people really like the series, but for me, it's just sort of meh. Not bad, not good, but certainly watchable. And that's why I'm giving Omamori Himari's anime a 5.05 out of 10. Well, that was the anime, but as always, it's time to take a look at the manga. Now, I actually read the manga before and finished it in early 2017. I gave it a low 6 out of 10 and remember thinking it was okay. I also believe the manga was notably different and darker than the anime, but I could be wrong. But either way, let's see if my opinion of the manga will change like it did with its anime. Well, I finished rereading the manga, and yeah, my thoughts from 5 years ago were still basically the same. I'll just start by saying that the manga is notably better than the anime. It's far from great, still has some issues that the anime has, but overall it's a decent read, and I give it a very light recommendation. That being said, I should go over why it's better, and the easiest place to start would be from the beginning. So right from the start, there's one small but noticeable difference, which is how the manga begins. The first two panels have Himari talking about how it's finally time for her to meet up with Shane, and then after that, it's the same scene from the anime. Now, the anime started off with this 1:40 long scene, which I wasn't really a fan of. It consisted of some of Shane's flashbacks, had some demons talking about him, and showed a quick glance at future characters in the series, such as Kuesu and Liz. Basically, the scene just gives you a quick peek at what's to come later in the series, and that's about it. There's nothing wrong with it, but I feel like the anime would have been better without it. Yes, it's only a 1:40 long, but it still feels unnecessary. Anyway, besides that, the rest of the chapter is just the first half of the first episode. Well, that is except for one noticeable change, which is Himari herself. In the manga, Himari talks very old-fashioned and uses words like thou, doth, tis, and all that other Shakespeare type shit. She'll go up to Shane and be like, doth thou withish to suck on me, pussy? So yeah, this is sort of a big change since this becomes a key part of Himari's character. I don't mind it, I don't prefer it over how she talks in the anime, it's just different. Now the funny thing about this is that after chapter 12, she stops this and starts talking like a normal person for whatever reason. Now there's two reasons why this could have happened. Either one, during publication, the readers were getting tired of Himari's speech, so the author was told to change it and make her talk normally. Or two, starting with chapter 13, someone new started translating the manga online and didn't realize that Himari's supposed to talk in olden dialect. If I were to guess, I'd probably say the translator just did an oopsie, but who knows. Like always, if I get something wrong or just don't know something, then you can let me know in the comment section. So yeah, it's jarring and strange going from chapter 12 to 13, but whatever. I kinda forgot she even talked like this after a couple chapters anyway, so it's not really an issue. So anyway, Omamori Himari's manga totals at 12 volumes and 75 chapters. Of those 75 chapters, the anime adapted about 25 of them. It's hard to say exactly how many, but everything after chapter 28 is manga-only material. But if you've already seen the anime and don't want to reread parts from the anime, then I guess I'd recommend starting at chapter 23. You'll be missing some stuff, but nothing too important. There's two chapters that aren't in the anime, which are chapters 3 and 9. Chapter 3 just has Himari and Shane digging around at a mountain. Nothing special. The only thing worth mentioning is that Shizuki goes up to Shane and warns him to forget about being a demon slayer. That's really it though, but the same can't be said for chapter 9. Here we get one of my favorite early chapters, which centers entirely around Rinko. We find out why she fell in love with Shane and also why she always wears her red ribbons on her head. Apparently, Shane has been buying her ribbons ever since they were kids, and later at a festival buys her a brand new pair. Then after that, they fall down, he squeezes her tit, and it's pretty poggers. While not a great chapter by any means, it's still one of my favorites because it makes Rinko a more enjoyable character. This chapter allows us to get to know Rinko more and gives her some one-on-one time with Shane, which was something that was lacking in the anime. Rinko is worse girl because after the first couple episodes, she basically did nothing and was just a typical childhood friend character. Now that being said, she still is a typical childhood friend character in the manga, but at least she gets screen or I guess page time. In the anime, she was just there in the background most of the time, said a couple lines, and that was it. I don't mind her being just the typical typical childhood friend character as long as she gets to do something and gets her time to shine. And in chapter 23, Rinko does get some time to shine again. After a couple weeks of dealing with Ayakashi and Koesu, everything seems like it's back to normal. Rinko wonders how she can seduce Shane and also worries about him leaving her behind since his entire life is changing. Later, Shane meets up with her at school, kisses her, grabs her ass, but then... Yep, none of it was real, which sucks, but that's not the point of this chapter. The point of this chapter is to show what Rinko has been dealing with for the past couple weeks and how this has affected her. For years, she's been close with Shane and thought that she'd be with him forever. But then all of a sudden, a bunch of sluts come out of nowhere and start fighting over his cummies, so now her plan to marry him is kinda fucked. Again, just like chapter 9, I wouldn't call this a great chapter or anything, but it's ones like these that help us become more attached to these characters. Now, the addition of these few chapters did make me enjoy the manga's telling of this series' story more than the anime's did. However, this minor addition is only a small reason why I enjoyed reading these chapters more than I did watching the anime's episodes. Although there are some differences between the anime's first 9 episodes and the manga's first 28 chapters, they're still basically the same story. There's some differences, such as this scene in chapter 17. So Shane, Rinko, and the class rep are at school and they find Koesu looking at the list of prostitutes Hunter Biden has slept with. Koesu tells Shane that they should kill all the Ayakashi together, but then Himari comes, tells her that Shane kissed her, she gets mad, and then leaves. In the anime, this still happens, except the setting is different. Instead of taking place at school, it takes place at Liz's cafe, and Shizuki is also here instead of the class rep. Then there's also episode 9, where Shama and Zaza return and try to fuck Shane. Shama sucks his cock, Himari and Shizuki come, but then some queer comes and tells them to have lunch with him at Hooters. Now in the manga, this scene or scenes are notably different. First off, Koesu uses a spell and turns Himari into a child, and damn, she's still hot!
FBI, open up!
Rinko and Shane are outside, and then Shama and Zaza come. Shama fucks Shane, Shizuki comes and fights her, and then Himari comes and fights her, and then Zaza comes and tells him to stop fighting. Also, the only reason he tells him to stop fighting is because Rinko gave him a lot of food. So if it wasn't for Rinko, then Himari would have just killed Shama, which is funny to think about. More importantly, while very minor, this tiny thing does give Rinko some kind of importance in this fight, which is something she lacked in the anime. All in all though, while being notably different from its anime version, at the core, these stories are still relatively similar. The reason I'm mentioning this is because, like I said, I enjoyed reading the manga's chapters more than I did watching the anime's episodes. I feel weird saying that because, again, the first 9 episodes and 28 chapters are very similar to each other. So why is it that I enjoyed these chapters more than I did with its anime episodes? Well, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it actually comes down to its art. Yeah, for whatever reason, the manga genuinely looks really good. It's not perfect, it's no Dragon Ball or anything, but it's still a very well drawn manga nonetheless. Although the male designs are kinda shit, all the females look great. The Ichi scenes look really good, and even the fight scenes look solid too. Again, are these the best looking fights in manga? Of course not, but still, there's no denying that these action scenes, Ichi scenes, or any scene or page look pretty damn good. Reading through these chapters are usually fun, and that's due to the panel layout, which is also above average. Himari's plot and characters aren't anything too special, and at best they're just okay. Characters are the most important element of a series, which is then followed by plot. Art and sound are important too, but they're mainly just decorations that support the story and its characters. No matter how good a series looks or sounds, if the characters and plot suck, the series is still going to suck. As appealing as the character designs are, and as catchy as the music tracks are in the Monogatari series, it still can't help the fact that the show is really fucking boring. Basically, there's a limit to how much sound and art can help a series. Now in Himari's case, this is really weird. Like I said, the story and characters are fine, but more so the characters. There's nothing too special about most of its cast, and because of that, I found it difficult to say that I liked a majority of the anime. The series was teetering between a strong 5 and a low 6 for me up until episode 9, but it just missed the mark. In the manga's case, I guess its art was so good that it raised my enjoyment just high enough for me to say, hey, this is a series that I'm enjoying reading. Now, this is something extremely rare, and you probably won't hear me say that the art of a series is what pushed me to say I overall enjoyed it for quite a while. The thing that's also interesting is that, like I said before, the anime doesn't look half bad. Sure, it's not great, especially when comparing it to the manga now, but on its own, it's still a decent looking show. I don't usually give scores to categories of a series, but I'll make an exception here. For comparison's sake, I'd give the anime's art a 6 out of 10, and I'd give the manga's art an 8 out of 10. So yeah, the manga looks nice, and it consistently looks nice. With that out of the way, I think this finally leads us to manga-only territory. So in episode 9, some queer and his Ayakashi called Tama came, and they were like, hey, the season is almost done, and we're gonna be the big bad guys now. And so the next episode had everyone dicking around doing nothing, and then the last 2 episodes had them fighting them, and it sucked. As soon as I got to this part in the manga, I sighed and thought this was where the series was going to go downhill. I did not want to deal with a potential 6 or 8 chapter long boring fight, but I thought, well, I'll just get it over with, and then I could see what happens next. However, after this scene at Liz's cafe, the manga goes in a completely different direction. Yeah, so the last 3 episodes of the anime were anime original, and the quality definitely shows. After Tama leaves, everyone does some training, and then Shizuki gets a short 2-chapter arc where she tries to kill someone who slaughtered her entire clan. Basically, Koisu lets Shizuki meet a girl who's part of the clan that killed all of her family. Even though the girl is innocent and doesn't have any demon-slaying powers, Shizuki still wants to kill her because she feels like it. Obviously, that's not going to happen though, because Koisu protects the girl and almost ends up fighting her. This is a good moment for both Shizuki and Koisu. Shizuki finally gets some time to shine, and she gets to develop too, which is good because she sure needed it. It's also a good moment for Koisu because it shows how much of an asshole she truly is. She knew Shizuki was going to go apeshit, and because of that, it gave her an excuse to kill her. Even though she loves Shane, she still wants to kill all the Ayakashi since she hates them so much, and instead of just killing her because she wanted to, she tried to make a good reason to. Could you imagine if Himari and Shane didn't come to stop Shizuki in time and Koisu ended up killing her? She would be like, hey, sorry about that, Shane, but that water bitch just went cuckoo crazy, so I sorta had to kill her. Now that would be funny. I kinda wish that actually happened. But anyway, Himari and Shane do come in time. Shane reenacts the scene from Good Will Hunting, and then Shizuki starts crying.
Why are you crying?
So yeah, those were 2 pretty good chapters, and the next 20 or so were good as well. I don't have too much to say about them, and I don't want to just summarize the entire manga either, so I'll keep my thoughts somewhat brief. These next chapters are basically just more of what the series has been up to this point. There's some fights, there's some training, and of course there's some Ichi too. The series continues to do a decent job of balancing between the action and Ichi moments, although it's still not perfect. While I do think the fights have been getting better as the series goes along, there are still some that just don't quite work that well. In chapter 46, Himari and Shane fight Tama's bodyguard or boyfriend or whoever the hell he is, and it doesn't end until chapter 48. I know 2 chapters doesn't seem like a lot, but this fight definitely overstays its welcome. It also doesn't help that the first half of this chapter has Koisu and Himari fighting a bunch of ghosts, which was sorta boring too. One thing these chapters also include is forced Ichi moments. Now I like Ichi, don't get me wrong, but here these moments feel like they're here just to fill in a quota. The author's editor probably said, hey, it's been a while since something erotic happened, so you might have to have Shane grab Himari's tits because I said so. Other series do this too, such as High School DX.
These nuts. Got him. Got him!
But I'll get to that at another time. Anyway, besides this fight, everything else before this is good. Some characters get some nice moments, some fights are decent, and the Ichi scenes are still erotic. So after Himari and Shane lost against Tama's lover, we then get into the next arc where 2 main things happen. First off is Rinko, who finds out that Tama is back and has mind-controlled class rep and has basically taken her hostage. So then the next day, she trains with Shane and realizes just how useless she is now since Shane has become much stronger stronger. Now, one thing I don't understand about this is why Rinko doesn't bother to tell Himari and Shane about Tama taking class rep as a hostage. I know Rinko knows that there's nothing she could do and that even if she doesn't do anything, Tama probably won't hurt her. But still, even telling Himari and Shane is doing something, even if they still do decide not to do anything either. It could be that Rinko is also stubborn and wants to make herself be useful to everyone, which is a good idea. Anyway, Rinko decides to hang out with class rep and Tama and tries to convince her to stop her evil plans. It fails, but at least she tried, which is all that matters. So yeah, Rinko gets to do something again and actually has an important role in the series, unlike in the anime. Now, the reason I've been bringing this up multiple times is because I like Rinko notably more in the manga. In fact, she's so much better that she actually jumped all the way up to 3rd best girl, making Shizuki 4th and Liz 5th. I will say that Shizuki and Rinko are very close to each other, but this now brings me to Liz, who's unfortunately now worst girl and by a fair amount. Now, I like Liz as a character. She's goofy, cute, and funny and basically does her own thing. She stays in her cafe all day living a peaceful, happy life and also wants to suck on Shane's cock. Now, despite liking her to a certain extent, it's unfortunate that even in the manga, she barely gets to do anything. She shows up occasionally, and even then, she doesn't seem to serve any purpose either, despite still supposedly being a main character. It's fun to see her when she is around, but I feel like she had potential to do more even though she isn't a fighter. That's why I enjoy seeing Rinko play a key role in chapters despite her being just a human with no powers. She could have just gotten cucked by the plot like she did in the anime, but the author wanted her to be important, so we kept her relevant. Liz, on the other hand, I feel like he just said, well, she gets to do her own thing. I'll show her tits in the fan service chapters, but that's it. I'm disappointed, but thankfully that's only one of the few problems I have with the rest of the manga. Anyway, that was just one of the 2 things that happens in this arc. While Rinko is busy getting fingered by Tama, Himari and Shane are busy meeting the other Demon Slayer members. So basically, an entire chapter is dedicated to the members talking with Shane and accepting him as an official member. But then immediately in the next chapter, they fuck him over by attacking Himari, so he's like, oh hell no! He fights them, rescues Himari, and then leaves, so basically the previous chapter was all for nothing, which is funny, so I don't care. But that then leads us to the quote final battle of the series, which starts at chapter 55 and doesn't end until chapter 63. Yeah, so this fight is pretty long for Himari standards, and it's probably my least favorite part of the manga. If not, then the beginning of the series would be. The problem with this arc is that, well, it's too long, and I probably would mind it less if it was shorter. Now, I don't dislike this arc, it's fine, I guess. There are some moments that are kinda slow and boring, but there's also some that are kinda cool too. The best moment in the arc, and probably even the entire manga, has to be when Koisu goes to protect Shizuki, but then dies. Yep, so Koisu, the girl who hated Ayakashi her entire life, risked it all to save one of them, and because of that she ended up dying. It's a sad moment, especially since Koisu is best girl, so it's sad to see her go. It sucks that we'll never get to see her again, because there's no way the manga would bring her back to life or anything. That would be pretty stupid now, wouldn't it? So Shane comes, sees that Koisu deleted System 32, goes to kill Tama, but fails. Himari then fights her, and...
Was that the bite of 87?
She scrapes and licks all the energy out of Tama, and then the arc ends. So yeah, I'm sorta mixed on this arc. It's certainly tolerable and has some cool moments, but it's mainly just too long. Also, like the fight I mentioned earlier, this arc also has some Force Ichi fanservice moments thrown in just for the hell of it. Again, it's nothing offensive or anything, but just something that bothers me. With that though, we now make it to the final arc where Shane is depressed since Best Girl is dead. One of his childhood friends just died, and it was due to him not being strong enough. He feels like shit, and there's nothing he could do about it now.
What the hell is this?
Oh, fuck off. I knew this was coming, but fuck off. Why have a death or fake death scene if you're just going to bring back the character again in a few chapters anyway? I'm not upset that she didn't die. In fact, I'm happy. I just don't like how it was handled. If you were going to have a fake death scene, then fine, but as soon as the final battle was over, then you should have shown that Koisu was still alive. Don't have an entire chapter where Shane remorses over her death just to say,
Nope.
She wasn't actually dead. Fuck you. It's not even done in a good or clever way either. So apparently Koesu read a book, and because she's so strong or something, she got resurrected because of a stupid curse, and now she's immortal and can't die? I don't fucking know. It's a dumb, stupid harem. Get over it. At the very least though, there is a consequence for Koesu coming back from the dead. Because she's immortal now, that means she can't age, so now she can't live out the rest of her life with Shane, which is #sad. But still, that's not enough, and like I said, it's fucking stupid. But anyway, Koesu is back, and Tama has amnesia and is good now because Himari scraped and licked all the evil out of her. So Koesu tells Shane that she's immortal, she hugs him, and then Himari goes sicko mode since she has all of Tama's evil energy stored inside her. She later shoves her tuna tongue down Shane's throat and then runs away because she's scared of doggy cock. Himari is missing, and she's also going crazy because the spooky evil power within her is taking over. A couple days later, Shane fights the strongest demon slayer of the 12 families, and honestly, this is one of the best fights in the series. Again, nothing great or anything, but it's decent, which is all that matters. All Shane has to do is land one hit and he wins, which is very hard to do. After he does manage to land a hit though, he goes to school where Himari is, talks with her, and then gets sent inside her body, I think. I don't know, and I kinda don't care, especially since we're almost at the end. So he talks with Himari, and the second the last chapter ends with her revealing that she was the one who killed his grandpa. So that's pretty interesting. Shane has to now force himself to forgive Himari since she killed someone who was very close to him. It forces him to realize that even if Ayakashi do decide to turn good, it doesn't erase the wrongdoings they've done in the past.
Fight!
Never mind, the author stuck up one middle finger for Koesu's death and now stuck his other one up for this. Himari didn't kill his grandpa, she only killed him because he was dying and asked her to, which is known as assisted suicide. So now she isn't guilty of murder anymore, they talk some more, they kiss twice, and promise to be with each other forever. Shane then wakes up in his body, all the girls fucked him in his sleep, and Himari magically comes back home and all the evil energy in her body is gone somehow. And that's how the manga ends. So, it's fine, I guess. Definitely one of the weaker arcs in the series, but just like with the last one, it's still fine. There are some good things about it, and there are some frustrating things about it too. The ending is kinda weak. It's very typical. Have the main girl come back at the very end, and now it's a big happy ending. Yay! I don't dislike it or anything, it just doesn't leave much of an impact on me. I feel like the series could have ended after the quote final battle against Tama. They could have just done the anime again where Himari immediately goes evil after biting Tama and then Shane saves her with the power of love. Koesu would be dead, Tama could or should be dead, and Shane fucks his cat. The end. But instead, we get a pretty generic and straightforward final ending, and it's sort of whatever. I'd still take this over Masamune's manga's ending any day though. Seriously, that ending can fuck off. But with that, I think that about does it for Omamori Himari's manga. It doesn't have the best cast, and especially not story, although it's far from bad and sorta decent too. Without a doubt, its biggest strength is its art, which sorta carries the manga and makes it worth reading. If the art wasn't as good as it was, I honestly don't believe I would have overall liked it. Its beginning chapters are a bit weak, and it takes a while until the series manages to quote-unquote get good. But when it does, it's a fun read, even if the later arcs are notably weaker and have their own problems too. Omamori Himari has some good elements, arcs, moments, and chapters, but it clearly has notable flaws, with one of them being an underwhelming ending. Overall though, I think it just barely manages to be a decent manga. Omamori Himari's manga gets a very light recommendation, and that's why I'm giving it a 6.06 out of 10. Well, that wraps up this video. If you liked it, then you can leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, or even support me on Patreon. Link in the description. Also in the description is a link to my Rumble, which has my first 28 videos, which YouTube took down. So if you want to watch another 10 hours of my content, 3 of them being hour-long videos as well, then you can watch them there. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Enjoy the new outro music.
These nuts, these nuts,